Okay, let's get started. If you could please take your seats. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we need to get started. Please find your chairs. Thank you. Could I have your attention, please? We want to get started again. All right, away we go. This morning was spent with a raw introduction to the PNCIMA initiative, and we're moving now into more experience-based and detailed information with these kinds of processes, and in particular, raising the issues, the challenges, and the sorts of approaches that have been used in the past. Before we introduce our next two speakers, I want to say a couple of things about, about the question period. One of them is that, as I said before we started the questions, there won't be time for all your questions live. That will be the case with each question period. That's one reason why we really encourage you to write down those questions and submit them. And I mean it when I say that the questions are in most cases, more important to the steering committee who will be working on next steps than the answers to those questions are. That's one thing I wanted to say. Secondly, I want to emphasize, as a result of the interactions that we had, that much of what you'll want to discuss in your questions are really things that should be richly talked about in the breakout sessions. So I want to encourage you to think those things through so that when you have your hour and a half this afternoon of intensive time in a group that's no bigger than about 35 or 40 people, you'll have an opportunity to talk about that at some depth. Another thing I want to raise is something that people raised with us during the break, and that is that some of the questions and some of the issues that will be going through your minds go to the very fundamentals, the very core importances of what you regard as valuable about this whole discussion of integrated management. What comes first for you? What you think has to come first in view of the times we find ourselves in. And again, this is probably not a place where those philosophic discussions can be raised in the form of questions, but they can sure be discussed in great depth in the plenary sessions. And PNCIMA is far from cast in stone. It is almost not cast in paper. It's encouraged by legislation. And that's why your vision of what's important and why, the priorities, the primacy, the values, the interests that you think are essential, are fundamental, need to be fleshed out. And so we encourage you to use the sticky notes, as crazy as that may seem to some, and really participate in the groups, because the product of all those group discussions in the breakout rooms are going to come back and be reported, and you'll hear your views reported at that point. Having said that, we want to move on to the next segment, which you'll see from your agenda involves hearing from two people. I'll introduce them separately. who are going to be talking about issues, challenges, opportunities. It sounds like advertising, but it's really substantive. And the first person you're going to hear from is John Bones, who also has a 30-year history in terrestrial and ocean-based marine issues in British Columbia. He was in the provincial government for a very long time, involved in land and marine issues. I knew him 15 years ago in connection with some of the land and resource planning that was going on in the province. He was eventually elevated to the rarefied air of ADM when he left the provincial government last July after a long career and went into the wonderful world of private consulting, where he now is. And so you'll get a chance to hear from John and to ask him questions without him charging you for that, which is a rare opportunity. So John's going to have 15 minutes, and then we're going to have questions after him before hearing the next speaker. So we're going to have two separate question periods of 20 minutes each. John.
"15 minutes. I'm going to have to be really quick. Well, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'd like to thank DFO for inviting me to come here and speak on a piece of work that I did for the PNCIMA Secretariat. I'm only wearing a tie because I knew none of the government people would be wearing ties, with a couple of exceptions. And I haven't had to wear one since I started consulting, which has been nice. So DFO hired me to, through the Secretariat, to put together a discussion paper on issues, challenges, and opportunities in the PNCIMA area. And I believe that there is, in fact I know there is, a summary of that paper in your handouts. I don't believe that the actual full-blown discussion paper has been distributed. So I'm in the unenviable position of doing a high flyover of a very high flyover discussion paper. But anyway, I will do my best. And I think, as was mentioned by Norm, it's really just an indicator of the kinds of issue topics that PNCIMA could potentially address. So I just want to, if we go to that first slide, the purpose then of the work that I did was to provide a high-level overview of PNCIMA issues. The things that could be topics. Yeah? Good? Okay. The things that could be topics for the planning process work. Challenges that relate to these particular topics, as well as the opportunities that the PNCIMA process provides to address them. Now, I was given a fairly tight list of topics, but through the Secretariat, we basically increased the number. There was, and through your work, and over the next year or two, you may increase them even more. But initially, the paper talked about 17 issues. And in terms of the work I did, it's essentially. Sorry? Oh, I have to do that. Darn, too many years in government, and I didn't have to do anything. So, okay. So based on PNCIMA background, the work I've done has been based on the background reports, the marine use analysis, the ecosystem overview assessment, and a lot of other really good background work that's been prepared through the DFO offices.